So today we're talking about a deck that ultimately shouldn't work, and I mean, it kind of doesn't, and we'll get to that, but at the same time, this combo is just so damn cool that I can't not make a video on this because it's... Finally, a use for Harmonious Archon, finally. Is there anything Throne of Eldraine won't do? And as ever, if you enjoyed the video, maybe you should give it a like. If you really enjoyed the video, maybe you should subscribe. In fact, you definitely should subscribe. I just want to get to 1,000 subs. Come on, guys. That's all. Then you can unsubscribe. It's fine. Just get me to 1,000. Just get me to 1,000. And then, if you really like the video, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Links are in the description. And if there's a deck list you want me to play, stick it in the comments, and I might get to it. Anyway, let's get to the deck list. So compared to most of the decks that I play, this is remarkably simple in its composition. It does one thing, it does it vaguely well, and if it doesn't work, you lose the game. Now, one thing I will say is that, yes, this is incredibly fragile, and it can play past an amount of things that it realistically shouldn't be able to. And a lot of people will just quit on you when you get the combo off, but at the same time, if you play against anything with counter spells, you might as well just give up. You can't win. You just cannot win. Although, oddly enough, you can win against rogues for some reason. I don't know, it's gotten a strangely decent rogue matchup. Anyway, what does the deck do? So, essentially, it's based around Harmonious Archon. This card is really cool, and when it came out, I'm reading it and I'm like, how do we abuse this, right? Well, I guess we abuse it in the same way you could abuse Dream Trawler, where you can bring out the deck with Transmogrify or Lukka faster than you ought to be able to. However, I mean, that's just not really enough, right? Pumping out this, whatever it does, just isn't really that great. But when you couple it with Mystic Reflection, it becomes insane. Because Harmonious Archon hits board, its effect goes on the stack, and then you chain Mystic Reflection, targeting the Archon itself. So then what happens is the two Archon tokens come out as two more tokens of Harmonious Archon, and then they both produce two 3/3 human creatures. So, yeah, like you can make huge boards just from like 3 mana potentially, which is crazy. The Mystic Reflection combo in and of itself is actually quite easy to pull off. It's more getting all the pieces completely on curve where your opponent isn't going to apply so much pressure that you can't beat it, because the earliest you can do this is your turn 4, and until that point you're not really doing a whole lot. So essentially with this deck is just comprised of some token generation. We've got buffing cards with Rally of the Ranks and Heraldic Banner. This is also ramp, so you can turn 4 a Lukka if you have to. Then we've just got token generation in the form of Forbidden Friendship, Omen of the Sun, Elspeth, and indeed Birth of Meletis itself. Now, the 3 mana combo you can only do in a later turn if you have a Harmonious Archon out already, but essentially you can foretell Mystic Reflection, then for 1 mana put it on Harmonious Archon, and then play Forbidden Friendship, and then just like create 2 Harmonious Archons out of nothing. And that's pretty cool. That's nice, and I'll tell you, pulling this combo off is just immediate serotonin into the brain. The problem really is Extinction Event is horrible. Doomskar, I mean, board wipes are going to be bad regardless, but the thing is you have some recovery, but not a whole... I'm really not selling this deck particularly well, but you know what? Let's just get straight to the footage, and you can see how this deck plays, because I'll tell you, it is hilarious and amazing, if a little fragile. So anyway, let's get to that footage. So, into game 1 we go, and we are actually up against Golgari Elves, which is like, it's not exactly the most difficult matchup ever, but this hand is like a little bit awkward, because the 2 Archon really isn't great, but it can sometimes play out in a way that's like basically fine. So, as an example, although you've drawn the 2 Archon, you can just kind of like hard cast them later in the game, and it just becomes quite a lot of pressure for 6 mana, if we're being entirely honest. Now, the game plan at this particular stage is like, right, just pile on as much aggro as we can, like, organically, I guess you could say. Because he's not really doing like a whole lot just now, so we don't really need to contend with a lot. However, drawing the third Omen of the Sun wasn't exactly the greatest of things, but it's okay. Like, it is fine. So the reason why I included this clip was to kind of show how it is actually, it's fairly easy to go against decks that go, like, just kind of go wide decks, because that's essentially what this guy ended up doing, and you essentially just go wider and taller than pretty much anything else. But again, that's all this deck does. You need to bear that in mind. It is one track, and if your opponent can play through it, then you're fucked. But the cool thing is that there's like a lot of passive buffing effects, like with Rally the Ranks and the Artifact Bastion thing. So it just means that whenever you're playing your guys, you're getting like 2 of them at once, and they're like 3/2 each. It's pretty cool. So this one thing I will say is, like, the Golgari Elves deck really doesn't seem to be all that much. Don't know how you feel about it. Maybe you've got a cool list or whatever. If you do, send me it. But otherwise, so far I've not been entirely impressed by Golgari Elves. If there's a way of buffing them all in Standard, that'd be pretty good. So we're scrying just now, and at this point it doesn't really matter what you take, but I chose the land because playing the Archon from hand means we don't need to sacrifice a guy this turn, whereas if we took the Lukka, we'd have to sack a guy and then it gets the Archon. It's not really that big a deal in this particular instance, honestly, but it's just one of those, like, small things. It's, like, technically better. But as you can see, that applied, like, so much pressure that turn that our opponent was forced to block. And at that point, it's just like, they're down too many cards, there's too much pressure on board. Now, if this guy had an extinction event, it would be a different story, but he doesn't. Now, the cool thing about this deck is, if your opponent's, like, running, like, single target removal, it's so easy for you to come back, because you can either just, like, hard cast an Archon, play a Lukka, play a Transmogrify, and then you just get your Archon back, and it's just, pressure's all there again, because they have to get rid of the big guy, not the small guys. Which is why Extinction Event is so horrendous to play against. So now we're up against Rogues, and this is a pretty cool match because we actually get to pull off the Mystic Reflection combo, and that combo is pretty sick. You're gonna love it. Rogues has been an oddly good matchup for this deck. You'd think that Rogues would just annihilate it, but the thing is that if you can get Rogues tapped out, which they don't always have mana open, especially early game, if you can get the combo off quickly because they've had to, like, play a bunch of shit, or as you'll see in this case, they just go into the story on their turn for some reason. So I mean, this is in Diamond, so it's not like, can't be that bad a player. Anyway, so we are this hand is, like, kind of awkward, if I'm being entirely honest, because we don't really have much token generation. So I was kind of like, right, so if we play a land this turn, it means all we can do next turn is play Elspeth, which is all we can do next turn regardless, really. But it means that we're up 1 extra mana generation source if we play the Bastion this turn, as opposed to foretelling the Mystic Reflection, as an example. So that's why I went with that. I guess it's just a little bit more efficient. So we play our next land, and then it means next turn we get to do the Mystic Reflection combo, and that is pretty sick. So again, it would have to ideally be tapped out for that to happen, but this is where it plays into the story, and I'm just like, amazing, cool, I get to just win the game. And if you're able to pull that off, which this deck obviously is pretty good at doing, then yeah, it's just so sick, because Rogues can apply, like, a lot of pressure, but Rogues don't play board wipes because they need to maintain an element, like, they need board control themselves, like, they need to, like, have their guys. So, like, Rogues is, like, probably the most insane tempo deck that we've, like, had to deal with in Standard for, like, a long ass time. I guess Is It tempo was pretty good last year, but this is way better than that. So Archon comes out, effect on stack, Mystic Reflection on Archon, brings out 2 Archons, brings out 4 guys. Sick. And that is just way too much for him to deal with. Because even, like, with what, 4, 5, 6 mana even, that's still not going to be enough unless he had, what, 3, like, 2 mana kill spells in his hand. And even at that, we've got the Transmogrify, so even if he did have that, it wouldn't really matter. So this is pretty decent against Rogues, surprisingly enough. Obviously, I would probably say that Rogues is the better deck overall, but it's just one of those things where it just kind of works out kind of nice. Because if you're playing against opponents that have a lot of like targeted removal over board wipes, then generally that's where your matchups are going to be particularly good. Aggro decks are quite hard to beat, and like hyper control decks are hard to beat, but this will absolutely annihilate like mid-range and I guess tempo decks, as long as you can kind of get through whatever counters they are playing. So this hand is pretty great, honestly. We are up against Temur Ramp, and holy shit, there's... this is... I do think that running 4 Mystic Reflection might be correct, but at the same time, I'm like, really mulling it over. So... this guy plays a Terror of the Peaks, and this is where Mystic Reflection is like insane, right? So we play our land, we play Transmogrify, get out an Archon, and that's like fine, right? Oh wait, no, this isn't the tempo. This isn't the Temur Ramp. This is playing against Sultai. Silly me. So Sultai is a deck where it's like, so like I said, Sultai is like more of a mid-range deck, and this is just showing how bad Extinction Event is for us. But mid-range, we can beat. Sultai is a big contender for easily being one of the best decks this format. The main problem is if they see a bunch of ultimatums, you're fucked. This deck can play out maybe 1 or maybe 2 ultimatums if you're super lucky. But for the most part, the second ultimatum is probably going to seal the deal. Now, Alrund's Epiphany would generally be horrible to see, except if you're hard casting Alrund's Epiphany for 6 or 7 mana, it's not that big a deal, because as much as it does effectively become 0 mana, draw a card, play a land, that's obviously fucked, but it's not as bad as it could be. Anyway though, so this is where we get to go off. Tapped out, we've got our Transmogrify, we actually get to do the combo just now, and hopefully they don't have Extinction Event. So in this case, we just play the Lukka, because it means we can then Lukka next turn. Again, it's just one of those things, it just doesn't really matter, honestly. But we get to put the combo off, we get a whole bunch of pressure, and we've even got one of the Bastions out, so it means we're actually, like, getting a buff on that, so that's pretty cool. Now, this guy's turn could easily be devastating. If he's got Extinction Event, or indeed Ultimatum, could go either way. Ultimatum would be pretty horrible, but I think for the most part, Ultimatum won't kill you. But Shadow's Verdict doesn't kill the Archons, so that's just too much pressure and he's dead. Easy peasy. So now we're up against Temur Genesis. And honestly, Temur Genesis, still just as good as it's always been. It's a pretty solid shell of a deck, for being entirely honest. But this deck has a trick up its sleeve when it comes to Terror of the Peaks. It's just hard cast Terror of the Peaks, and I'm just like, is there a way out of this? And it's like, wait a minute, there's an amazing way out of this. So we've got 5 mana. We copy Terror of the Peaks, and we play the Omen of the Sun, so we get 2 Terror of the Peaks. So I stupidly didn't go face with the second Terror of the Peaks trigger for some reason. I don't know what I was doing there. But at the same time, I'm just like, you know what? This just doesn't even matter, because he is absolutely dead. Especially with the Transmogrify. So I'm like, this is definitely game, right? And it is definitely game. So we just swing in with both for 10. We Transmogrify one and an Archon, and then all the guys coming in via the Archon is just game because of the Terror of the Peaks. It's fucked up. Almost makes you think you should be playing Terror of the Peaks in this deck. But just look how sick that is, man. If I was this guy, I would be so angry. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So now, we are playing against Rogues again, because I'm like, you know what? We love to see it, don't we? We like seeing Rogues get battered. So, obviously this guy's playing the crab version of Rogues, so it's like a little bit, not strong, a little bit more melee than usual. So the worst part would be is if he mills all the Archons. That's like going to be worst case scenario here. And this hand isn't especially strong. Like, we need to see the 5th land going forward from here. If we do see the 5th land, we can immediately Lukka, but at the same time, that's risky because there is Drowning Lock mana being held up. So you're kind of stuck in this position where it's like, do we just go for it? Do we not? And I can't quite remember what I went for, so looking at this, I would say play Rally the Ranks, play Omen of the Sun, but apparently I go for the riskier option, or do I? Right, okay, so, you know, I like these kind of scenarios where I'm like, you know what? I'm consistent with my own thinking. In this situation, I'm like, no, I should go for the more reserved approach and just hope that he taps out his next turn. Because I've got quite a lot of power. If he blocks any of it, it's like taking one of his guys with him. So it's like, you know, we're fine for making that trade because we've got the Lukka in hand. So we're just hoping to God that he plays something else. If not, we're kind of just forced to play the Lukka and hope he doesn't have it. Which, sadly, we are. And I was really just thinking, yep, Drown the Lock. So we need to go, we need to raw dog this, or hope we draw a Transmogrify and he taps out. This is a bit of a longer game, so we do grind a little bit. But we do make it, we do make it. So having one token is like fine, but there's a Transmogrify. But we get a Transmogrify, he's tapped out. So now it is time to go in. Oh man, just getting to do this against like tapped out mana just feels incredible. Nothing feels better. So blue source would be good, but this is the scenario with the deck where it feels quite bad because you are essentially top decking. You know, you don't have the mana for the Mystic Reflection, so if it outs the Archon, you're just kind of sitting there twiddling your thumbs like, ugh. So we're just foretelling this, hoping to God that him making these blocks is just going to be good enough. Hoping he can't out this token because we now need this token. So we do get a Scry, so theoretically if we can get a Lukka or another Transmogrify, we can get the combo off in the event that he's tapped out. So the Aghaim's Awakening felt quite like it was going to be a bit more impactful than that. It wasn't. So he's only got 1 man up, so it's like, right, it's now or never. And it is now. So we get the Lukka. Oh my god, Serotonin. Time to fucking Archon this guy. And we get to pull off the combo, especially with the foretold version of the combo. So it just feels that little bit sweeter. Archon coming out. Mystic Reflection on the Archon. And then we just go mega wide. And what is this rogue player to do? Absolutely fuck all. It feels good when you know your opponent has just been like, Jesus, like, what the fuck? Even against a board like this, just swing it all in. Who gives a fuck, right? Like, he can make risky blocks all he wants. We have plenty more guys where this came from. So, we might as well get the Elspeth out, right? And then we can get Lukka to bring out another Archon. Gets to go a little bit wider. So it just feels pretty good. Feels pretty good. Now, in this case, I'm pretty sure we just swing in and he just takes all the damage and dies. I think he could have lived an extra turn had he blocked the Lurus in, but then, like, what do you have at that point? Like, we know we don't play board wipes. So, just in case, probably best to play Extinction Event in your Rogues deck. You never know, right? You just never know. So the final game of this video is against Mono White. I just thought it'd be interesting to, you know, include a clip where it's us playing against some kind of like hard aggro. Now, Mono White is actually the deck that has the highest win rate of any deck this format. So really, if there's any deck you should be playing, you should be playing that. Apparently, Mono White life gain / aggro is like 60% win rate on average across Arena, which is like, that's crazy. That's really, really insane. Anyway though, This guy's off to like an obscenely good start. Like this is like the unoutable start. Like this is exactly the hand you want. And indeed, we still beat this, which is crazy to think. So we fire out the Omen of the Sun. We need to get our guys out on his turn. We've got our land. So we've got the turn 4 Transmogrify, which is obviously going to help like so much. Put up blockers and start smacking him in the face. And then we've also got the 3 mana combo as well. So that's why this clip is also particularly good. So I'm not gonna lie, this is like kind of like a god hand almost, especially against mono white, where if they're not playing like, so Skyclave Apparition doesn't hurt this, and also like no one's really playing Banishing Light. Some people do, and it sucks because if they hit the Banishing Light at this stage and you don't have a follow-up play, sucks. The Skyclave Apparition is irrelevant, who cares? So now, the play is pretty damn easy. So we even have enough mana where we can play this. Select white, buff our guys. Reflection on the Archon, and then we just play the 2 mana, make 2 guys sorcery, and then they just come out as 2 fucking Archons. Hilarious. And this is, I mean, like, this is just so much to deal with. Like, this is the widest possible board. That's probably the most damage you realistically can make by this point, I think, in Standard, really. Like, can you make more than that? Can, like, you make a bigger board than that off 6 mana? I don't know, maybe? Probably, right. But anyway, that's the end of the video. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed making this particular video because the deck is hilarious. And finally, we've got use for Archon. And if you made it, see if you've made it this far, tell me. I doubt anybody's watching at this point, but it's just good to know. Anyway, guys, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Catch you later.